All right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me across the states in Nigeria. And I must start with a proverb by G.D. Anderson that says that feminism isn't about making women stronger. Feminism or women are already strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives their strength. And I think that it was important for me to open the floor today with that adage from him. And again, I say welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener and, of course, the chief host of this platform. My name remains Kike Atanda-Owo. And, of course, I think it's important for us to hear what On This Day in History segment has for us. When I return, I give my submission on it. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. I think my takeaway from On This Day in History segments is about the West and the British that have used this strategy and devious means to disintegrate us from the right and, of course, from time. And it is only that we never learn anything from history. Yes, I'm saying that because their aim is to cause dissent and anchor challenges amidst us. I don't want to use the word problem, and I feel that, we can see all of that from what has been played today in terms of the disunity and, of course, the crisis that took place. And I feel that, Kiriji War in 1893 that symbolizes that Africa, needs to come together, beyond all the challenges that we are going through. You can see how the likes of Gaddafi, who was also seeking African unity in a monetary and economic space, that they just felt that, we need to know better in terms of fighting for our rights. And now the same Libya is torn apart with the issue at hand. I just feel that what are the lessons for us so that we can disabuse, the culture of what's it called, challenges that faces us in Africa. I think on this note, it's important for us to get a message from my sponsors. When I return, I'll go straight to the main conversation. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. International Women's Day is still the season, and I'm not backing down because there's a vast number of female leaders in various industries who have shown capacity for leadership and excellence in their various fields. And I will be discussing the importance of youth and women in driving social innovation and, of course, sustainable development, as well as strategies for enhancing women's participation in the agriculture sector. And my Real Talk will emphasize on the need for collaboration amongst grassroots organizations and civil society groups to address gender-based violence and, of course, discrimination in our country, Nigeria. And additionally, I will delve into the role of mentorship and empowerment in inspiring the next generation of female leaders. And on a live show with me today, I have another powerhouse, an African giant, on the show. I admire her courage because she focused and navigated a career in a less chosen space by women, and that's agriculture, and she's also a social innovator. I think it's important for us to check her profile. When I return, we'll go straight to her. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks, for staying with us. And again, let me use this opportunity to quickly usher in my guest, Mrs. Ndidi Okonkwo Nwuneli. I hope I pronounced the last name properly. It's a pleasure to have you on Real Talk with Kike today, and I apologize for, the delay in connection. How are you doing today, ma? I know you're a very busy woman.
It's wonderful to be with you, Kike. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I must start by telling you that I'm grossly inspired by what you have done. And I'm proud that as a woman, you are breaking boundaries set for women. A woman in agriculture and, of course, social innovation. Like I said in my intro, how did you come about this, career when others, are thriving in a corporate world as bankers, as lawyers, and many more, so being a woman and you, championing the space. I think you should tell us what your experience has been like thus far.
Thank you, Kike. I think my desire to enter the ag and food landscape was really born out of my early experience in the US. I went to the US when I was 16, and people would say to me, "Where are you from?" And I would say, "I'm from Nigeria." And they'll say, "Oh, my mom used to say, finish your dinner. They're starving children in Africa. They're starving children in Biafra, in Somalia, in Sudan, in Ethiopia." And that made me angry. The face of Africa being a hungry child made me really sad, because we're naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. And God has blessed us with the land, the water, the temperature, everything we need to do to thrive in this sector. And yet we continue to face this not only stereotype, but real challenges around economic productivity in our ag landscape and really maximizing what we're naturally endowed to do. So that fostered my early interest in the sector. And as a social innovator, I came up with ideas on how to solve the challenges in the ag sector, which birthed companies such as Sahel Consulting and Ace Foods, which I co-founded with my husband, Ndidi Nwuneli, and most recently, African Food Makers, which works across 40 countries in Africa, helping entrepreneurs to scale. And we continue to innovate because we believe that we can change narratives from a hungry child, when you think of Africa, to a successful female entrepreneur, and that we can get our food to be competitive, and we can increase the affordability and availability of nutritious food on our continent. And that's what I've devoted the last 15 years doing.
Interesting one at that. And I like the fact that you came in with a force to change that narrative. And as the incoming CEO of the One campaign, and how do you plan to address the unique challenges faced by Nigerian women in accessing economic opportunities and entrepreneurship? I'm an entrepreneur, and I know what it is when it comes to ease of doing business in our environment. Can you speak to this, please?
Yeah, so I accepted the position of the first African CEO of the One campaign because I really believe it's important for us as Africans not only to determine what type of financing comes into the continent, but also to hold ourselves accountable for how the money that flows in is spent. One is 20 years old and it's been working globally to galvanize resources, ensure healthy lives in Africa, economic growth, and climate resilience. But as the new CEO, I'm going to ensure that Africa's agenda takes center stage and that we're bringing in the right type of financing for economic growth. And clearly, female empowerment is critical for economic growth. Women in agriculture is critical for economic growth and healthy lives. If we can ensure that food is available and affordable for our people, that addresses this whole concept of food is medicine, and we have healthier people, more productive workforce, and I can go on and on. Climate resilience is critical because with climate change, not only are we seeing hotter climates in our continent, more flooding, but it's affecting the food ecosystem. And we need to be climate resilient for women in agriculture to thrive and for the whole sector to continue to thrive. And so I feel like this new capacity, this new position will give me an opportunity to not only shift the dialogue, but also empower our people at all levels and ensure that we hold our governments accountable for taking the right steps and instituting the right policies to make change happen on the ground.
Fantastic insights right there, and we believe so much in you that you are going to be bringing positive change to that role. And I must touch on your work in empowering female entrepreneurs in Nigeria, which is a commendable one, going through your profile and what you've achieved thus far. Could you share some success stories or impactful initiatives that have significantly contributed to that women's economic inclusion when we are talking about International Women's Day this year, Inspire Inclusion?
Definitely. So through the African Food Changemakers, I launched the Leading Women in Food Fellowship. And this fellowship is a 6-month fellowship where we identify amazing young women who are disruptors, ecosystem enablers, entrepreneurs, chefs, and storytellers in the food ecosystem. And we give them the skills, the tools, the training, and the mentorship to not only amplify their voices, but enhance their impact. I started this fellowship last year with support from the School World Forum and School Foundation, primarily because while women are critical players in the food ecosystem, they still operate at the primary production level, where we see female farmers mostly working in low margin crops, or at the retail level, when you go to our open air markets, you see women selling pepper and tomatoes and vegetables. And at both spectrums, that's where you have the lowest margins. That's where you have the lowest productivity. And that's why we continue to see women underperforming in this sector. And what this fellowship tries to do is identify women who are ready for leadership. They're under 40 years old, so they're young women, but they're already making a difference either in the private or public sector, shaping policy, providing financing, telling stories. They're making change as chefs, as entrepreneurs, as disruptors. And together we're creating a community of women who will not only be sisters to each other, support each other, but also change the status quo, working together. And the first year was amazing. I mean, we had women from across Africa apply, over 650 women. We selected 27. We not only trained them, but we took them to Dar es Salaam for the end 1-week conference at the AGRF. This year, we've selected 32 women. And these are women who are ready to be leaders in our space. And we just launched it on International Women's Day for the next cohorts. And I'm just telling you, I'm so excited to see what they're going to do. I'll give an example of one of the women, Chef Moyo. She's about 25 years old. She's a Nigerian chef who tells stories using food and curates amazing fusions to her platform, Atije. And recently, we took her to Egypt, where she competed on the Jollof Wars with male chefs from Senegal and Ghana. And it was just so exciting. And I was proud to see this dynamic woman holding her own on the global stage. And not only have we given them those platforms to get into other new markets, but we've told their stories, amplified their voices, and elevated their brands. And so I believe in mentorship and sisterhood. I believe in community. There's a Madeleine Albright quote that says there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And I know we all want to go to heaven, so we have to support each other. And my desire is that as I climb up the ladder of impact, I pull up my sisters, and together up there we can make changes in our ecosystem. And I'm so excited and inspired by the young women who continue to change the status quo, push boundaries, and support other women.
Fantastic submission right there. I must say, well done, well done, well done. But in your own opinion, with what you've shared thus far, what are the key barriers, hindering Nigerian women in particular from, accessing that finance, maybe network? Sometimes I must say that even the so-called network is so expensive. Some networks I've heard that say you have to pay certain amount of money in millions before you can be part of the group, or stuffs like that. And of course, opportunities for business growth. And how can these challenges be effectively addressed? Because if you're saying that we're women supporting women, I feel that I stand to be corrected by you. I feel that most times you're supporting your own people that you are both in the caliber of, the same space, so to speak. How do you draw the ones who are vulnerable, who are actually looking up to be another Mrs. Ndidi, to be another, so many women out there, Mrs. Ngozi Wela and all of that. How do we start changing or addressing the major challenges that causes barriers for these women?
So I'll say there are 3 main barriers to women in the Nigerian context. Number 1 is access to training and support. And we see that with female farmers. I mean, the World Bank statistics reveal that 30% women farmers in Nigeria generate 30% less outputs than their male counterparts. And women SME owners generate 60% less profits than their male counterparts. So part of it is training, right? having the right extension support, access to inputs, access to finance, access to community and market linkages. And that's one of the reasons I mentioned I created the Leading Women in Food Fellowship and the African Food Change Makers, because we need this training. We need each other. We need data. We need access to markets. And African Food Change Makers is a free platform. So to address your question, Kike, it is a free, completely free platform. It's afchub.org. And I employ women to join and leverage this hub. And I created it for free because I know that access to information and access to markets is expensive. Unless we lift up each other, we're going to continue to see the information asymmetry and the vulnerability that you referred to. The next thing we need is policy changes, where we hold our governments accountable for a gender lens with every intervention. Because yes, it's about dry season programs, and you hear the government has launched this or that. What percentage of the beneficiaries are female? What percentage of the funding that goes through our banks are giving to women? All through IWD Day on 8th of March, I was talking about only 10% of land in Nigeria is owned by women. Only 4% of financing goes to women. So if we don't hold our governments accountable, our private sector institutions accountable to have clear quotas for what percentage of that money should move to women, what percentage of the opportunities should be given to women. We need to set quotas. We need to find the women, incentivize them to take advantage of these opportunities and support them as they do. So policies are critical. And then the third thing is cultural dimensions. Kike, we've seen this repeatedly, where people are leaving land, and land is important for primary production. They're leaving land only to their male children. When women get land in most communities, they're getting the land that is the least fertile. They're getting land that should not be cultivated at all. And we see that our faith communities, both Christianity and Islam, need to address the issue of land and inheritance for women, and wealth transfer to women, because women have a critical role to play in society. Women need support through their cooperatives, their self-help groups, and this is a cultural dimension. And unless we address it, we're not going to see the gender equity or close the gender gaps that currently exist in the food ecosystem.
Fantastic submission right there, and I agree with you when it comes to training, being a trainer myself. But putting that aside, I have two questions for you so that I can manage time. And of course, I know that you're a very busy woman. Your organization, Leap Africa, and Ndidi Okonkwo, I hope I pronounced that properly, that's a NIA, that focuses on youth leadership development and female empowerment. How do you see the role of youth and women in driving social innovation? Digital have come to stay, or have come to play right now, and everybody is tapping into it, especially the youth of today. Again, when we are talking about innovation, we must talk about sustainable development in Nigeria. That's my first question to you. And my second question is the fact that with your extensive experience in governance and serving on various boards, really, you're a woman who I've admired so much, I would like you to touch on the strategies that you think or you believe are essential for promoting gender diversity and, of course, inclusion in corporate leadership and decision making. Because the women of today, Nigerian women of today, we must speak to their conscience in how, they can continually develop themselves no matter wherever they find themselves.
Thank you. Both excellent questions. In terms of the role of young people, we cannot understate it. 70% of our population is under 35. And our young people are key. They are the leaders of today and tomorrow. They need the skills, the tools, the support to step into leadership. And what we've done through Leap Africa, which now works in 8 African countries, is not only training young people with those skills, but also empowering teachers to deliver the curriculum. Leap also has a Social Innovators Program, which helps young people who want to change things that make them angry in society. Now, at Sahel Consulting, another company I co-founded, we actually have a Sahel Scholars Program. So we go into our university and we teach our young people that they can make money and change lives in agriculture, and are social innovators. And we give them the skills and the tools, training, internships, and scholarships, because we need more young people getting excited about the food and agriculture landscape. So there are so many avenues through which I'm supporting young people. And then again, African Food Change Makers has so many programs for youth around building climate resilient businesses, around trade, and around women and empowering young women to lead. So through all the expressions, I've prioritized young people because they are our present hope. And when I look at them, they give me hope for the future of Nigeria because they know how to embrace technology. They're willing to take risks. They are creative. They're willing to ask tough questions. They have energy. And unless we see them as the biggest asset in our country and support them, we're missing out on a good opportunity to transform this country. In terms of governance, that's an excellent question, Kike. And yes, I think that most boards in Nigeria and most boards around the world recognize that women on boards makes business sense. And that unless you have a critical mass of gender equity and diversity, you will not see the profitable growth and the sustainability you need in your company. There's data, it's irrefutable evidence around the role that women play on boards. And I think boards are starting to wake up to this. And I've been fortunate to serve on many boards where I've been the first woman, but I've made sure that I've brought other women on boards. And I don't step off the board until I'm replaced by a woman. Because ultimately, when you have a door open for you, your responsibility is to keep that door open for more women and to ensure that you leave behind a critical mass of women on those boards. And it takes a lot of courage, but it also takes women bringing their A game so that when you show up on boards, you're bringing your excellent ideas, your experience, and your convictions and integrity, and you're showing up as a full woman, confident in who you are. Many women feel like, I'm so lucky, they've given me a seat at the table, I'm going to be quiet. That doesn't help and serve anybody, and it doesn't serve the needs of the company. So to my sisters, when you are given that opportunity, come and show up with your A game, because how you deliver ensures that women continue to come into the door and you leave the door open for younger women to follow in your footsteps. So it's been a privilege to serve on the boards I serve on, and I learned so much from my other board members, and I've been fortunate to have both male and female sponsors who have opened the doors for me. I'm really standing on the shoulders of giants, of mentors who have helped me along my journey.
Fantastic, fantastic one right there. And we must say that it has reflected in all your success story till date. We'll go on a quick break, and when I return, the conversation will continue. Stay with me, I'll be right back. All right, glad to know you're still right there with me. In case you just joined the show, today's edition is also within, the concept of International Women's Day 2024, that's Inspire Inclusion. And my discussion with my guest, focuses on International Women's Day 2024 under the theme that I just mentioned, Inspire, aspect of women's empowerment, entrepreneurship, social innovation, both in Nigeria and globally. And I must emphasize that Mrs. Ndidi, have been sharing a lot of nuggets with us in terms of how to remain consistent in terms of training, get mentorship, and of course, she will share insights now, going forward in terms of promoting female entrepreneurship, addressing, also the barriers. I know you've mentioned that already in terms of, women economic inclusion and advocating for gender diversity in corporate leadership. But again, I want to say many thanks, Mrs. Ndidi Okonkwo Nwuneli. I'm using all my mouth to pronounce the last name, and I must say many thanks. But let me use this opportunity to quickly open the phone lines. For those who are watching us, remember that you can be part of the conversation by calling the studio number 080-988-77400, showing on your screen right now. And of course, we're streaming live on Facebook, on YouTube, both on Real Talk with Kike platform, and of course on Silverbed platform. And with all that you've shared thus far, Mrs. Ndidi, I said thank you, many thanks. But I must, bring you back to the background of agriculture. Given your own background in agriculture in terms of entrepreneurship, what initiatives, or will I say policies, do you advocate for to enhance women's participation and leadership in the agricultural sector, both in Nigeria and across Africa, or will I say globally, knowing that, something prompted you to go into agriculture?
Thank you so much. So I would say, number one, we need to support women entrepreneurs who commit to value addition in this context. And I'll use the example of our food company, Ace Foods. We started Ace Foods in 2009 because we recognized that 40 to 60% of our fruits and vegetables were going to waste. We saw the high rates of malnutrition in our country, and we decided to start a company that would process locally. Now, enough companies are not getting the support they need to process locally. And at a time when food inflation is 33%, you need local processing. Now, through this company, have created jobs for about 150 full-time staff. 90% of them are women. And we source from both male and female farmers, but we make an effort to source from female farmers. We also have a program for women in distribution, empowering women to be first-time distributors of our products. We have a program called Our Mama, where we train women on basic marketing, accounting, money management, to be able to become distributors. Through this company, I've seen the power of SMEs. Now, SMEs started and run by women need some things from the government. They need an enabling environment where it is easy to do business. And oftentimes, our ecosystem is actually hostile to SMEs, but more hostile to women-led organizations because of the biases in our society. I've talked about access to land. I've talked about access to networks. And if we don't create an enabling environment and special windows for women to get the support they need to start and grow businesses, we'll see most of our women entrepreneurs saying, I prefer to say small and micro. And we don't need small and micro anymore. We need medium and large companies because economies of scale is what keeps you in business over time. So we need an enabling environment. We need access to financing that is affordable and accessible to women entrepreneurs. We need access to markets. And this is where we need to matchmake women and require this homegrown approach. And I'll give an example. In a country like Brazil, they stipulate that at least 30% of whatever government buys has to be sourced locally. This is school feeding programs, this is public procurement programs, this is, IDP program, whatever it is. How much of that is being sourced locally, grown locally, and how much of that is passing through female entrepreneurs? Many countries have targets to say incentives are given for private sector, large private sector that source from female farmers. Incentives are given government procurement programs sourced from female farmers. Unless you have those stipulations and incentives, you continue to neglect women. And so I think there's a critical role for SMEs to play in the ecosystem. And when SMEs thrive, the community thrives. At Ace Foods, we provide a warm meal to our staff, health insurance to our staff, an adult literacy program. And you can see the impact that the company is having, not on the people who work there, but on their families. My favorite Christmas parties are Ace Foods Christmas parties because you see the impact in numbers. And you can lead companies that employees thrive. And if they're social innovators who are committed to making a difference in their communities, their company thrives and their community thrives. So we need to support an SME run by women and our SMEs that are committed to value addition and wealth creation in Nigeria.
I agree with you completely, but let me touch on what happened recently, which is Davos. You were selected as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum Davos in 2024. Yeah, and the economic summit just got concluded, I think, in January in Davos. What are your thoughts about Nigeria at that summit? Because I heard different perspectives regarding the summit. But that's my first question to you. I'm trying to manage time now. The second question is you being the author of Food Entrepreneurs in Africa. I like the fact that you've shared quite a number of perspectives towards the entrepreneurship aspect of your career, scaling through the resilience of agriculture and businesses, which I think we took place in 2021. And we have food inflation and scarcity in the country right now. What would maybe the word now is, what would your words of advice be to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to resolve all these issues of scarcity of food, and all of that? What's your take on it? What's your advice for him?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last question, which I think is very important. Nigerians are going through severe hardship, and that's because, unfortunately, there have been serious policy inconsistencies in the food ecosystem. So my first advice to the president is, when you think about the food ecosystem, recognize that it's not just about agriculture. The food ecosystem is Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Trade and Investment, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Technology, Ministry of Water Resources, all together. And when we're developing a seamless policy for our people, it needs to be cohesive. So I am quite convinced that the first thing we need is a cohesive agenda that puts Nigerians first and puts Nigerian food self-sufficiency first. And to achieve that, Kike, I was actually the chair of the Policy Commission for Nigeria 2025-2030 on food security. We have a 10-point agenda. The document is available. It says the first thing is invest in improving the productivity of Nigerian farmers, which means we need access to good seeds, fertilizer, and an enabling policy. Our farmers need to triple their yields, and we have the technology right here to do it. But we need the government to get out of the way and let the private sector and the agro-dealer networks work. Instead of granting ad hoc subsidies, walk through the current process that has already been built out on building on Adesina's work, using agro-dealer networks. So we need to improve our productivity. Number two, we need to ensure that we protect our borders and protect Nigerian consumers, which means we should stop giving quotas and some unhealthy practices around tariffs, which make Nigerian food uncompetitive. Because then what happens? You have dumping of substandard food from the rest of the world, and Nigerian farmers cannot compete. So that's why as seamless policies are critical. Number three, we need to ensure that we address insecurity. Insecurity can be addressed if we work with our ICT providers, our farmer organizations, and our security agencies to ensure there's intelligence, to share that intelligence, and to keep people protected. Because farmers need to be able to go to the farms, and our transporters need to be able to transport food without fear of being attacked. And security is critical. And the fourth is climate change. And thankfully, there are lots of good strategies now being implemented to ensure that we not only are adapting, but also empowering our entrepreneurs to protect businesses against climate risk. And there are lots of work that Sahel Consulting is doing on all four fronts. I believe we have the organizations in our country that are poised to transform this food ecosystem. But again, we need an enabling environment at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local government level. Imagine, Kike, we have 774 ADPs in each of our local governments, and yet they are dormant. We need to revive our extension support systems, leveraging innovation technology and AI to equip our people to remove the bottlenecks in our ecosystem. So that where there's an abundance of food, we know. Where there are shortages, we know. And that there's data that's available to the average Nigerian. Because where there's data, there's transparency and accountability. You can't hoard, you can't take advantage of people who don't know pricing, and then you put Nigerians first of everybody so that Nigerians can afford a healthy meal every single day. And that's my desire, and I believe we can achieve it in our lifetime.
Fantastic one right there. And when you were talking about food security, what came to mind is your upcoming book, Food Entrepreneurs in Africa, sealing resilient agricultural businesses, in terms of shedding light on the importance of resilient agriculture. I must ask you, how can investing in women-led agricultural enterprises contribute to this food security that you've earlier mentioned in terms of economic and resilience in Nigeria, knowing that, again, I must emphasize, there's no ease of doing business in this country. Help us out.
It's a practical guide for entrepreneurs who want to scale. And there's a whole chapter on shaping policies. I really encourage anybody who wants to get involved to read that book. There's also an online copy. But beyond that, I would like to say two things. I think women entrepreneurs are a silver bullet to solving Nigeria's food crisis. And we need more of them to rise up and to innovate and to partner to solve the problem. Honestly, like you said, women understand how to feed their households. Women have that primary responsibility to ensure that their children have healthy food. And so as we empower women through the ecosystem, we not only ensure that their voices are amplified, but we ensure that they have the financing, the skills, and the access to market to thrive. And so this has to be a policy priority at the highest levels. In terms of why I wrote that book because so many of our businesses are struggling to scale. They're micro and small businesses, but we need businesses to scale, to be national players, to be regional players, and to become international players. My dream, Kike, is that when I go to a store in the US, I'll see a nicely packaged chocolate bar and it will say made in Nigeria, right? That luscious chocolate right here in Lagos will have not only taken over the Nigerian market and displaced all the imported chocolate, but should be now on the Whole Foods shelf. Because we need to change that face of Africa from a hungry child to a successful female entrepreneur. And we can do that with so many of our value chains. But first, we have to feed our people. And that's why I said food self-sufficiency before export-led growth. And export-led growth is critical, but that's a second tier responsibility and focus. First tier, feed our people and then feed the world. And we can do it.
And I must say many thanks for leveraging with your own platform to inspire and mentor the next generation of female leaders, especially when it comes to change makers in Africa, whether in SMEs, whether in governance, whether in politics. I say well done with all that you've done thus far and what is still ahead of you. But this will definitely be my last question to you because of time. The spirit of International Women's Day 2024 and the theme of inspire inclusion. What message, what direct message or advice will you like to share with the young Nigerian woman, listening to us right now, in terms of inspiring them to make a difference in their own communities, their own little community? I always tell people, start from your, community, and then you can take it further and beyond. What's your advice for young ladies listening to you right now?
Well, I believe, like you, that everyone has a sphere of influence, whether it's in your family, in your church, in your school, in your business. You have an opportunity to inspire inclusion. And how can you do that? First, through the way you live your life. Live your life with excellence. Bring your A game every time. Surround yourself with a community of supporters. Be a champion for other women. Open doors that inspire both genders, because we can rise together as a nation where both genders have opportunities, both male and female. You can also inspire inclusion by asking tough questions and shaping the policies in the companies that you work with and the partners you engage in, and challenge them to say, how are they inspiring inclusion? How are they creating safe spaces for women? How are they gap and the gender gap in their context? And I think if you ask tough questions and show up with your A game, you become a rock star. I'm rooting for you, and I look forward to celebrating the success of Nigerian women, because Nigerian women are unique. Nigerian women are blessed. And I believe that this is our time to rise up and take our place on the global stage. Thank you.
Fantastic one right there. I must say thank you for coming on the show today. It's been an interesting time with you on Real Talk with Kike. And of course, we had an awesome show on this episode. Courtesy you, our resourceful guest, Ndidi Okonkwo Nwuneli. I apologize if I didn't pronounce Nwuneli. Many thanks. Thank you so much for Thank you too. Thank you. But before thank you so much, and I wish you the very best as you continue to forge ahead in your career. And I think that before I wrap up the show, it's important for me, to how will I put it now, as for my trending, because I know that the trending people are looking forward to the trending stories, but I will be giving you a bigger trending over the week for the International Women's Day celebration. As you all know, that I am one of the major media publicity partner for the Women in Management and Business and Public Service WIMBIZ. And this year, we had an outstanding event to mark International Women's Day 2024. One thing I love about WIMBIZ is the consistency and what they do for women folks at large. It was themed to be inspired, be included, but the event promotes inclusion for women and with recognition. And WIMBIZ is also a presence across board in governance, in politics, in business, name it. You know what it is when it comes to what WIMBIZ represents. And I think that it's important for me to just use this opportunity to just showcase another inspiring one from WIMBIZ. I leave you with a snippet of the event as I close the show. Before then, I think it's important for you to be kind to one another and stay blessed.